Hello and welcome to my this little video where I show you my usual sort of composing process when I'm making battle themes for video games or RPGs or what have you. So this video basically goes over a sort of formula to how I do things. If you've ever seen my how to compose a Kingdom Hearts battle theme video, this more or less goes over the points that I explained in that video. So I brought Contact up and I've got a piano sample going on here. I'm just going to change the distance from far to near so it sounds a lot more closer to the microphone. I usually start out with the piano because that way I can get a piano reference going on. So I always refer to this when I'm thinking of new melodies or backing rhythms or whatnot. I'm not actually as good on the piano as you might think I am. But yeah, we're gonna stop here. I'm gonna change the time signature to 3/4. We're just gonna set the tempo up to about 170. This is probably my standard speed for most of my battle songs. Something simple. So I've come up with something simple, and this is probably how I want my piece to start sounding. But it's not going to start with the piano. I've loaded up two string samples. One is a lower end staccato strings, and the second is a higher end staccato strings. And you're going to see how I use them in a sec. I'm actually just messing about here at this point. So what I'm going to do is actually record the idea I had earlier into the piano reference track. And then I'm just going to record the second part of that idea I had. So after sorting out my quantization problem, I actually just had a little bit of trouble with the sustain pedal automation where I cut off the beginning of it. So now I've had to sort of draw it back in just so when that part plays, it's certain to actually keep the sustain pedal in now. Some more quantizing issues. So you might think the quantizing doesn't even matter because the piano is just a reference, but the string samples I'm using sort of have a very slight offset that makes it very weird to play on the rhythm when I'm just using a metronome. So having the piano reference there helps me a bit. See, I couldn't even rely on an auto quantize feature because it would just always quantize wrong anyway. So now we're gonna play around with the high staccatos, based on what we had with the piano reference from earlier. See, the interesting thing I've got here is that with the lower end staccato strings, they will always play the same volume. No matter how hard you press on the keys, they will always play the same volume, depending on how high or low the mod wheel is at. Whereas with the higher end staccato strings, they're purely velocity based, so you can do a lot of accented string rhythms, or string sections, whatever you want to call it. We can also delete this piano reference, this has pretty much been recreated anyway. So right now I've basically created my backing rhythm. This is pretty much going to be the backbone of the piece. So there's always time for a little bit of improvisation, start getting some ideas down if necessary. So now I'm going to bring out the violin sample from Garrison's personal orchestra, which I managed to bring from my Windows PC, and bring it over to the Mac as a contact library, which is great. So we're going to use the violin solo sample. Excuse me. Just going to change the panning from all the way to the left to the center for now, just so I can get a good idea of the sound, and I don't want an annoying violin. Well, it's not really annoying, but I just don't want a violin all the way in my left ear. I'm also going to raise the volume a bit. So now with the violin, I'm basically just coming up with a melody, see what I can come up with. Sometimes this can take ages, sometimes it can be very quick. Well, so I obviously should utilize violin duets more often. So after having failed trying to make a melody with the violin, I'm just gonna go ahead and start with the percussion. So I brought in some snare drums. And we're gonna start making a pretty standard drum roll. Next, I'm going to get the timpani, and instead of relying on Kontakt or any other sample library, I'm going to go and use the timpani from the Logic samples. Mainly because, I don't know how to explain it, but the ones from Kontakt doesn't have much of an oomph. And I don't know, this one has a bit more definition, and I really like the definition of this timpani. Obviously, it doesn't sound like the most convincing timpani, but whatever, it works for me. Okay, so we've got our snare and timpani set going, so we're just going to put back the other instruments in and see how this sounds. I also realised this is the percussion is a bit too loud, so I'm going to lower the volume just a tad, just so I can hear what's going on with the strings. Okay, so now I'm going to attempt at doing a violin melody again, and I'm just going to edit out the mistakes. So Logic had just crashed, and I was a very unhappy person at this point, mainly because I had not saved at all, but then I was able to recover my data, so thank God for that. I should also probably save it at this point as well. Something title, I don't know. We have some nice lush legato section strings, violin section strings going on. This is so it can layer on top of the violin solo track I've got going on. It basically mimics everything the violin solo is doing. So it has a layered effect and it gives it a bit more of a defined sound. I keep using that word, defined. So we're just going to copy that down there. And if you've ever wondered what like sample names mean when they say legato, especially with string samples, basically what it means is that the notes flow from one to another without any breaks. So it sounds very smooth. So it wouldn't go from da da, it would go da, if that makes sense. So because of that, I have to basically overlap the notes with the next note, so it keeps that effect. If there's any gap in between the notes, then it would just sort of play the next note as if it was just starting. I'm not so good with explanations, but hopefully you're following me. So from here on, I'm just going to change this section up a bit. So now I've gone back to the piano reference, and now I'm coming up with, I don't know, some sort of melody or another backing rhythm with a different backing bass sort of thing. Okay, so that sounds halfway decent. So now I'm going to put some muted strings, or soldino strings, if you will. I usually don't put these in most of my compositions, but for here, I'm just going to have like a really kind of lush, soft, almost bittersweet sort of break into the next section, if that makes sense. So now I've recorded the piano reference again for another piece, for another section. And then after quantizing that, I'll just transfer it to the short strings on the low end. And after quantizing that, then I move on to recording the high strings. I'm very much a recycler when it comes to composing music, especially with this whole like regions thing. I like to bring back certain parts of a piece I'm already, like the piece I'm already composing. I like to bring back certain parts in previous sections and bring it into newer sections if it fits. You know, sometimes it doesn't fit. So here I record a nice an improvised piano overlay, just to give this section a bit of atmosphere. Just think of it as putting sprinkles on a cake or something. The sprinkling notes here and there. So at this point, I started to run out of ideas. It was getting pretty late as well. It was almost 2:30 in the morning. So I'm going to finish this another day and record that part of the composition process as well. So I'm just going to play through.
Take this.